Hello, this is Latoya of Infinitenature, and I am back with a new video on revisiting the Sacred Contracts, Part 3. Hello, everyone. I am back. This is Latoya with a new video on the Sacred Contracts. We are the revisiting of the Sacred Contracts. This is Part 3, and I can honestly say that I have been really enjoying this book. The last time that I made a video on this, I was on chapter 8 of creating your chart of origin. And that was a very thorough investigation of all of my archetypes and how it showed how each of them show up in my life, how each of them kind of connect with each other and tell a story of my life, how they show up consciously and unconsciously. A lot of times they show up unconsciously in the shadow form. And now that I'm aware of these things, I can utilize it for the benefit of not only of myself, but for the collective. So it's been a very life-changing experience for me reading this book. It's been a lot of shadow work, as I mentioned before. And I'm just glad that I got through this part and I took my time. It was a very thorough investigation. So after I completed that chapter, we went on to, I went on to the next chapter, which is 9. And chapter 9 talks about interpreting your contracts. So that's where you start to redo your readings on yourself. You start to and what Caroline does is that she gives you steps on how to do that. So you'll ask yourself a more generalized question, because in the further chapters she gives you even more information of different charts that you can create based upon if you want to know information on your health, on your relationship, on whatever. There she has examples of how to do that, and you get more specific with those type of questions further along in the book. So right now where I'm at is that I am every day asking myself a question about anything that's on my heart or mind, and I'm getting a lot of insight about myself and how all of these archetypes come together and how they work together, and all of these lessons that I've learned over the years, and how what I'm learning now. And I really feel like I'm really releasing a lot of blockages, not only from doing this, but from other things that I'm doing in my life that coincides with this, that's definitely helping it. But it's very amazing. And I also want to say that I completed the book. Because even though I am in every day, like doing a reading for myself every day, that's pretty much what I'm doing right now. I have completed the book. So I'm still working with the book, even though I have completed reading all of the chapters within the book. There are, I believe, 11 chapters in a book, and the rest of the book is really about just sharing other people's stories about how they were able to read their charts, how their charts were read, things of that nature. Talks about how to do like the charts on your on your health, in relation to the health. And I want to also state that it's not about diagnosing yourself, so don't ever use this as a way of getting medical advice. I definitely would not encourage that, and she definitely says that within the book, even though I do believe in natural ways of healing and also being able to understand the symbolism behind why you may have a certain ailment or a certain disease or whatever. I think it's really good to look uh, at the symbolism behind those things, because it can help give you insight on where it may have been triggered on an energetic level before it manifested into a actual physical form. So I think it's good to utilize these tools in this book for that, in order to understand a more emotional, spiritual meaning behind these things. Because once you are able to get a better understanding, that can really help you release some things, or remove blockages, or take action on things that may be um hindering you from living your best life. You know, I know for me personally, when I am not creating, it impacts me and my body. And she asks you certain questions within the book when it comes to your archetypes, about like what happens when you are on a physical level in relation to your archetype. So I think it's really good to look into that also. But with interpreting your chart, it's a great way of understanding the lessons behind your experiences in your life. It's a great way to look at that. So I'm very excited that I really stuck with this book this time. I feel like I was ready this time, and I really want to encourage people who are interested, or are currently reading this book, to take your time. Do not feel like you need to rush with this book. This is not a book where you just rush and rush and rush. No, this is a book where you take in the information and understand on a deeper level where you're coming from. And I want to give you an example of how I utilize interpreting my chart. So I'm just going to look through this real quick, look through my notebook, and see what is I'm going to just look through this and see which one I can share with you that's simple and not too long and drawn out. Okay, so I found one that I wanted to share. It is the question that I asked myself was, what is the rescuer archetype purpose in my life? So this was a very interesting reading for myself. The first thing that came to my mind was another archetype, which was my victim archetype, which is in the fifth house. And if you know anything about astrology, the fifth house is in relation to creativity, it's in relation to pleasure, luck, children, things of that nature, having fun. So, what I wrote is, and I may speak, and when I speak to myself as if I'm out, like I don't say I say you. So I said this aspect is here for you to empower yourself, and for you to release the tendency to victimize yourself. It stunts your growth, creativity, optimism, and imagination when you do this. The rescuer is in your ninth house of spirituality, which is associated with the seventh chakra. The ninth house is associated with Sagittarius, which is also includes the travel, spirituality, religion, and wisdom. It's about the boldness and independence, which is in relation to Sagittarius. Um, this house fuels inspiration, devotion, and passion to realize an intimate relationship within the divine. The shadow is managing the spiritual ego. And all of this information is from studying the book, and also what Caroline Meese talks about, because she discusses all of the houses, she discusses the chakras and all of that. So this is what I gathered from her book, and along with I've of course have studied it on my own, and also through my personal development program that I was in. So I definitely am familiar, and I have a love for astrology. So all of this is familiar with me, for me. Um, and the big thing when it comes to this is surrendering my will. The seventh chakra is associated with living in the present moment. The power is inner divinity. The strengths are faith in the divine and inner guidance and insight into healing and devotion. And the reason why I'm talking about the seventh chakra is because my question was about my rescuer archetype. So I wanted to make sure that I wrote down everything about my rescuer archetype so that I can, that gives me, so that I'm one of those people that I have to write down things, and I tend to remember things when I write it down over and over and over again. So it's kind of like for me to practice that, instilling all of that information that about my different archetypes. So the seventh chakra, like I said, is about living in the moment, inner divinity, like, looking within for the answers, faith, having faith, inner guidance. And a shadow is the need to know why things happen as they do, which causes you to live in the past. That's the shadow of the seventh chakra, which I find is very true. That's one of the things that I have been working on, is focusing on the present moment. Looking back to see where I came from, and also to learn the lessons, but to not dwell on that and to have forgiveness. So the rescuer archetype, this is what I wrote. This is what I interpreted after I went through, is the houses and what each of them stand for and mean, and what the rescuer is, how that plays a part in that. The rescuer archetype connects you to see things beyond the physical eyes. It builds your trust muscle and to trust yourself and God. It guides you to save yourself first. You can only pour from a full cup. You have the advocate archetype, which, when used correctly, the light aspects of the rescuer shines. The rescuer assists when needed, and once the rescue mission is accomplished, it withdraws. That's what Caroline Myss mentions about the rescuer. Now, what I just read to you is what I interpreted. But I also, like I said, I always want to give credit where credit is due. You know, when it comes to each of the definitions of the rescuer and what they did, that came from her interpretation in her book. Okay. And also she mentions that a rescuer provides an infusion of strength and support to help others survive a difficult situation, crisis, or process that they lack the stamina or the inner knowledge to maneuver themselves. And then I say, through relationships, I had to learn that the best use of this aspect enhances my spiritual journey while supporting another with no attachments. I'm not secretly seeking love from them. And so then after I wrote that, what came up for me was my seventh house, which represents relationships and unions, right? And mine is, my vampire archetype is in that particular house, In the shadow, Caroline Myss says that the vampire pulls off the energy of others, and codependent relationships tend to develop at this aspect. There's a power dynamics in the male-female relationships, giving your power away, need of approval, need to have others take care of our survival, the fear of being abandoned, chronic complaining, over-dependency, holding on to a relationship too long after it ended, chronic power struggles. And then I wrote, I see now that my vampire and rescuer archetypes are closely connected. The shadow aspect of the vampire triggers the rescuer within me to help my love interest out of fear of abandonment and approval of their love for me. In the end, I was heartbroken and powerless. I learned to do things for people out of the kindness of my heart. It also led me to recognize that my line of work is heavily connected to this, and my advocate being in with my advocate being in the sixth house of career and finances. And so what Caroline Myss says about the advocate is that it's coming to the defense of others. It's a lifelong devotion to championing the rights of others in the public arena. Passion to transform social concerns specifically on behalf of others. It's symbolically They are dedicated to inspiring the empowerment of groups or causes that are unable to be empowered on their own. Advocate needs public expression, whether it is writing on a blog, whether it's painting, whatever the case may be. And then I wrote, I am here to support those who need my specific assistance as their advocate and guide. So after I wrote that, I didn't even think about it. As I wrote down guide, I was like, hold on. Guide is also one of my archetypes. My guide is in my 10th house of highest potential. And the guide, what Caroline Meese says is that it takes the role of the teacher to a spiritual level, teaching not only the beliefs and practices that make up established religions, but also the overarching of seeing the divine in every aspect of life. A continuing pattern of devoting yourself to teach others from your own spiritual experiences. But the shadow is more interested in financial gain. So you got to be careful with that. The 10th house, which I said is the house of highest potential, is associated with the 5th and 7th chakras. It's ruled by Capricorn. Is represents being all that you can in physical and spirit, what your sacred contract is prompting you to recognize and realize. The shadow is self-sabotage or lack of faith, doubt, fear of failure or success, and responsibility. It's where you face whether you would deliberately, I am tripping over that word, y'all, and I know how to say that word, deliberately block your highest potential from emerging, and why. Be challenged to retain humility as you become more empowered. The 5th and 7th chakras are the common theme of this reading. It's about the intuition and the gut. The 7th is about the throat, the voice, and choices. And the interesting thing about this is that when I got my Reiki done, I got my Reiki done a couple of months ago, and I was advised that a lot of the condensed energy that was going on in my body, a lot of it was coming from my throat. And I remember being asked if, am I releasing my anger? So everything makes complete sense. All of this makes sense to me now. So the 5th chakra represents divine will, faith. The shadow is having the need to control others or things. The 7th chakra is about the head, divine consciousness, faith in the divine. Also, that's a common theme, inner consciousness, insight into healing. The shadow aspect is living in the past due to wanting to know things that's the same thing that I just mentioned earlier. So that's pretty much what I gathered from that particular reading. And once again, that question was, what is the rescuer archetype purpose in my life? So that was like very insightful. I got more out of that reading than I really even anticipated. And to be quite frank and honest, when I look back on like situations that I was in, where I was in a situation where I was involved with a man, not my current husband, like definitely not that. But when I was involved with a man and it was not what I needed out of a relationship, definitely. But I realized in that dynamics that I was being a rescuer in that situation. In one situation in particular, I was being a rescuer and I was trying to prove myself to this person. And I really was giving away my power. It was a very codependent relationship. However, that situation catapulted me onto a journey of self-discovery and really taking time for myself and loving on myself. That situation really led me into starting to read more books on spirituality. It led me to journal more, to write affirmations. It really pushed me into really taking the time to mend my heart that was broken at that time and really heal myself. And then months later, I ended up meeting my husband. Like, you see how things happen? Like, even though it may seem like the situation was horrible and just awful and the person was just the worst ever, they really taught me a lot about the importance of having love for yourself and pouring from a full cup. And when you do things for somebody, you don't do it for approval, you don't do it for love, you do it because you have so much love within you. That's what that situation taught me. You know, it's really deep. And what got me is that if I can be really vulnerable, I feel like I'm already being vulnerable. If I can be really vulnerable with you right now, I recall with this particular person, they would ask me questions. I remember towards the end of us being in conversation with each other, like being in, like, connected to each other, they asked me, could I be their spiritual advisor? And I was just like, what? Because during that time period, I was definitely learning more about myself. I was really into, what's the meaning of my life. And like I said before, I have a passion for astrology and anything unseen. I really have an interest in for. And we would have conversations, and they really appreciated those conversations that I had with them. I could tell that. But what got me, but to me, all the stuff that I went through with this person, I don't want to go take it there, but all that mess that I went through with that person, and they had the nerve and the gall and the audacity to ask me to be their spiritual advisor. And I was just like, what? Like, no. And I was like, you have, and it just got me. I just couldn't believe it, and I was just like, no, I'm not going to be that for you. But in that, now hindsight, looking back at that person saw an aspect of me that I am meant to share with the world. You know what I'm saying? I'm meant to share this information, like share my compassionate nature, share my own personal experiences. Like, you have to know who your client and who your lover is supposed to be, who your friend's supposed to be, and who your client's supposed to be. I remember reading that in Queen of Fool's book, Sacred Contract. I mean, not Sacred Contract, Sacred Woman. and Sacred Woman, she talks about that, about knowing who you're supposed to be, who is supposed to be your mate, and who is supposed to be your client. Because that's exactly what was going on. And I didn't look at it like that back then. I was like, what? You asking me to be all of this for you? And like, no, I can't do that. I was like, just no. If I told you the whole story, you would really be like, this person had the nerve and the audacity and the gall, but whatever. I don't want to go into that, but I am very appreciative of them because I learned so much about myself. That experience catapulted me on a journey that is amazing and has brought me to where I am today. But thank you guys so much for listening. That's all that I wanted to share. I don't want to get too long-winded. And thank you so much for watching. Listen, I keep saying watching because it's on YouTube, so it's like a video, but it's audio. But if you want to keep up with me on social media, you can go to Instagram. That's my favorite one to go on. It's Instagram at Infinitenature #1, or you can go on Tumblr at Infinitenature. You can go to Twitter at Infinitenature1 and Facebook at Infinitenature. And just stay tuned for more videos on this. It'll probably be a while before I have another Sacred Contracts revisiting video because I'm really taking my time with really analyzing like my chart and things of that nature, and really, honing into my reading skills and my intuition skills with this. So it's going to probably be a minute. So I have been working on with my camera. I did go to a class so I can get familiar with my new camera. So I will soon be making videos where you can see me again, and I'll be making videos on other aspects of healing and holistic way of living. So thank you so much for watching, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.